Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leanna Levine-Reisner. I'm the Network Director of Plant-Powered Metro New York. We are a community-based organization that's committed to our collective health empowerment through whole food, plant-based nutrition, which we understand is an evidence-based approach to nutrition. We are going to take questions via chat in the middle, but we will save most questions for the end of the program. And Dr. Ettinger also has some great ways for us to interact with him over the course of the program as well. I'm going to get started by sharing my screen with you. Dr. Ettinger is joining us from New Jersey, the Hackensack Meridian Children's Health, Hackensack University Medical Center, and I will let him introduce himself more fully and give you a little bit of background before he gets going.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining me, and thank you to Plant-Powered Metro New York for inviting me to give this talk. Thank you, everyone. I know we all have a lot on our mind and appreciate the hour that you're going to give me. So yes, more about myself. I'm a pediatric nephrologist. I take care of kids with kidney disease at Hackensack University Medical Center. I'm board certified in obesity medicine. I'm a physician here in the Pediatric Healthy Futures program, which is a weight management program. I'm also certified in plant-based nutrition. Oh, and then can you hit next, please? And I'm also, oh, no, go back. And I'm also vegan. So how do you know if someone's vegan? Well, just wait about 10 minutes and they'll tell you. So here I put it on my first slide. Next. So we're going to talk about what foods to eat, what foods not to eat on a plant-based eating plan. I'm going to reassure you about your macro and micronutrient needs. And we'll talk about the health belief model, which I use with my patients to help them make durable dietary changes. Next. So I'd like to introduce you to this Slido program. If you could all take out your phones or switch screens, and you don't need to download anything, just go to slido.com and enter this code, H613, for this meeting. And answer the question, what superhero power would you want? And I'm going to try to put my screen on so that we can see the polls as you enter. One person has voted that they would like teleportation, 15 to 20 people on. So while you have the Slido out, I'd like to show you that there is an option to answer this question, but also there's a tab in the upper left-hand corner of your screen and your phone that says Q&A. So you can actually post your questions, and at the end of the talk, we'll go through the questions. You can upvote other people's questions that you want to hear the answers to also. And then I'll also share with you in the upper left-hand corner of the Slido screen is 3 bars. And if you can pull down those 3 bars, you'll see links to recommended websites with more information about the plant-based diet that you can look at your convenience. Mind reading is popular these days. The results, we got 38% went mind reading. 8 people have voted so far. Super speed. So as questions pop up, you can ask your questions in the Slido app. That'll remain running for the talk. So we can go back to the talk. All right, so we have a lot in common with chimpanzees. We both have opposable thumbs, but we're able to make great societies and civilizations, and the chimpanzees are not. And one of the reasons why, one of the most important reasons, is that we can tell each other stories. I can meet strangers, like the people that are joining us, and I can tell stories, and other people can believe the stories. We tell each other stories a lot. Next. For example, I could say to this chimpanzee, Mr. Chimp, you have a banana that I would like. Please give me the banana. If you give me the banana, that will make you a nice chimp. And in December, this man, who's very jolly, will come in the middle of the night from the North Pole on his sleigh and leave you a bunch of bananas in the morning at a great holiday because you are a nice and not a naughty chimp. And the chimpanzee, let's pretend I could communicate with the chimpanzee with sign language. The chimpanzee might be like, I'm not so sure about that. I've never heard of this practice, and I'm not quite sure I believe it. Next. So I say, well, Mr. Chimpanzee, you drive a hard bargain. I'm going to give you this green piece of paper. You give me the banana. Then you can take this green piece of paper down to the market, give the green piece of paper to the person behind the counter, and you can pick out something else in the store, like a mango or a coconut or whatever else you like. That's another story that we tell each other. These are entirely made up stories. These are equally legitimate stories. The only difference is that if you're over 6 years old, you recognize the Santa Claus story as a fairy tale and the universal understanding of money as a particularly important story to believe in order to survive in this civilization. But they're equally legitimate, totally stories that we've made up and share with each other. So for many years, I heard the same stories. Mr. Chimpanzee, put down that banana. It's full of carbohydrates. That's going to make you fat. And you need to be eating lean meat and proteins, and you need to be eating healthy fats and drink milk for strong bones. So those are the stories that I was hearing and believing up until about 6 years ago when I started to hear different stories. And I started to question those stories. And I'm going to share the stories that I heard and learned. And I ask you to keep an open mind so that at the end of the talk, you can decide if my stories are in the fairy tale column with Santa Claus or in the universally accepted column that's important for your health and well-being, like understanding the concept of money. Next. So we're going to talk about the whole food plant-based diet, which are the stories that I heard. It really emphasizes whole, minimally processed foods, avoids animal products. All your calories are eaten from plants, and you need to avoid refined foods like added sugars and processed oils. I use the term vegan interchangeably, but technically, a vegan seeks to exclude all uses of animals by humans, including for food, clothing, and entertainment. And there is that differentiation. For example, I might say that my belt is vegan because it doesn't have leather, but I wouldn't call my belt plant-based. So a lot of what I do is with obesity. So I kind of will take that angle with you. You might want to lose weight, or you might be happy with your weight, and these tips could help you maintain good weight, or you might be a really skinny vegan and might want to use these tips to help gain weight. So back in 2007, the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research, they gathered a panel of experts from around the world, from all the countries. They reviewed the scientific literature for 4 years, and they came up with this recommendation. In order to maintain weight, you want to have your average energy density of your diet to be lowered to 125 kilocalories per 100 grams, which is equal to 568 kilocalories per pound. If you want to gain weight, you should aim for a higher calorie density of foods. If you want to lower weight, aim for less. Next. So I come along and I look at a label. For example, to the right here, the box of Cheerios. I was over in England a few years ago, and they, on their labels, have their nutrition information per 100 grams. So it's easy to look, and you can see that the energy content is 378 calories per 100 grams for these box of multigrain Cheerios. Whereas the banana, if you can look to the left, for 100 grams, you only get 89 calories. So if you start your day with a bowl of Cheerios or an equal weight of bananas, you'll feel full with the same weight of food, but you'll get so many more calories from the Cheerios. And if you can look down, you can see that the Cheerios have a lot more sugar, 74 grams of carbohydrate versus just 23 grams of carbohydrate for the bananas. Next. You also notice that there's a lot less sodium, in about 1,000 times less sodium in the bananas versus the Cheerios. So these Cheerios are full of sugar and salt, and we give these kids as snacks and then wonder why they grow up craving such salty and sweet foods. So I've used this trick to actually help my patients who have high blood pressure as a nephrologist. Just by switching out their breakfast foods to fruits, really reduces their salt load for the day and can actually help a lot with hypertension. So next. So in general, people eat 2 to 4 pounds of food per day. And here's a spectrum of the calorie density of foods. All the way on the left is fiber and water, which is per pound. And then your leafy vegetables and mushrooms, fruits, whole grains and breads and potatoes have 400. Oops, I lost the slide.
Great.
Okay, and then you hit that 568. To the right of that 568 is all foods that are going to make you gain weight. So there are some certainly whole plant foods like avocados, nuts, and soy that are higher. And then to the right of that, you start to get into the red foods, which are what I call the processed foods. So the meats, cheeses, and milk, soft drinks, fried foods, milk chocolate, all the way to the right, oil, butter, and fat has the highest calorie density per pound at 4,000 calories per pound. So next, I call all of those processed foods because they've been changed from their whole food origination. So if you think about a potato becoming a potato chip, so the potato is over in the 400 calories per pound. So if you have a pound of potatoes in one hand, what happens to the potato become a potato chip? It goes through the factory. The factory takes out the fiber and water and adds salt and oil, and you get the potato chip, which is over around 2,000, 2,500 calories per pound. So if you have a pound of potatoes in your left hand and a pound of potato chips in your right, you're going to get so many more calories in your right hand with the potato chips. You see how that potato has been processed. Well, think about all the meat also. Think about a corn on the cob, which is over as a vegetable, very low, 200 calories per pound. You can give that corn on the cob to the cow. What does the cow do? It takes out the fiber and water and a lot of the nutrients. It adds fat and cholesterol and salt, and out comes the hamburger or steak, and that's over to the right of the 568. The potato going through the factory is the same as the corn going through the cow. It's a processing that increases the calorie density. And some foods are doubly processed, so give the corn to the cow, and the cow makes milk, and then put the milk through the factory and get ice cream or butter. And you can see that each processing step really increases the calorie density. Next. So what about going paleo or going low carb? You can see if you're eating a lot of meat and you end up around 1,200 calories per pound, if you started your diet as the standard American diet and you're eating way to the right with a lot of chocolates and fried foods and sodas and oils and fatty fried foods, and you go paleo or low carb, and you move your slider over to the left and land where that caveman is, yeah, you're going to lose weight just by virtue of eating the same weight but less calories per pound. So that's really how the low carb diet works. But you can see that you're still on a weight gain diet if you continue with that style of eating. Next. If you look at commercial weight loss programs like Weight Watchers or Jenny Craig's, those products land around the 1,700 calories per pound. Again, if you're eating the standard American diet way off to the right on this slider and you start to eat Weight Watchers, yeah, you're going to benefit. But isn't it a nice business model that you're actually still eating weight gaining food, it's just at a slower rate? So if you stay on that commercial weight loss program, eventually you will gain weight again, and that's why they often fail. Ironically, because all the foods that I eat are in the green range, if I were to become low carb or start eating Weight Watchers, if I ate the same weight of food and did nothing else, I would start to gain weight. Next. So please don't make the salad mistake. If you eat a small salad and you move your slider all the way to the left and you're getting 100 calories per pound of salad, and that's your lunch or that's your dinner, you're going to be way low on calories. You're going to be starving to death. You're not going to be thriving on the plant-based diet. You're going to feel weak. You're going to feel hungry, and you're going to say, this isn't for me, and you're not going to last very long. So that's why really the sweet spot, if you will, of this way of eating is really around the 400 to 500 range of calories per pound, where you really want to fill up on the starches. It's more of a starch-based diet. Conversely, you don't want to do the salad plan where you start with a salad and then you throw chicken on it and you throw cheese on it, or you throw some high sugary or oily salad dressing. That'll move your salad slider all the way to the or far to the right, and you'll no longer be eating a weight loss salad. You'll be eating a weight gain salad and wondering why you're not losing weight. Next. So looking at these meals, you can see how to help make them weight loss meals. So the sandwich on top, I see a lot of people take off the top of the sandwich. And so what do you have with the bread is to the left of the 568, the vegetables and the greens are to the left of the 568, whereas the meat and the cheese is to the right of the 568. So if you take off the top of the sandwich, you've actually moved the slider of that sandwich to the right. and it's become more of a weight gain diet. What you really want to do is take the meat and cheese out. That moves your slider to the left, and stick another piece of bread, whole grain bread, in the middle, or some starchy vegetables or non-starchy vegetables in the middle of the sandwich, and then all the ingredients of that sandwich are to the left of the 568, and you have a weight loss sandwich. And for the bowl of pasta, people say, oh, I can't eat pasta, it makes me gain weight. But if you can see, if you have a whole grain pasta, that pasta will be to the left of the 568. What you really want to do is take the meatballs off and the cheese off that are to the right of the 568, and probably the pasta sauce, which is full of sugar and oils, and make it more of a pasta salad with the whole grain pasta and veggies. And then your pasta will be a weight loss meal. Next. So corn to the left is weight loss. High fructose corn cereal to the right that has been processed is weight gain. Next. Olives to the left of the 560 is weight loss. Olive that has been processed to the right and become olive oil is weight gain. Next. The ancient Egyptians ate poppy leaves for pain relief. Nowadays, we take the poppy leaf and put it through a factory and turn it into heroin. So you can see too much corn that's been processed, too much oil that's been processed, and we have an obesity epidemic, too much poppy leaves that have been processed, and we have a heroin epidemic. Plants that have gone through factories are no good for people. Next. So this was an interesting study that showed how this works. What these researchers did was they took a group of healthy, normal weight women and basically tricked them and said, hey, we have this restaurant, we want to change the menu. We want you to try different parts of the menu and let us know what you think. And we're going to keep you in this restaurant for a day or two and give you different samples, and please fill out these surveys. So you can see along the bottom axis, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. And they gave a buffet. The young women could eat whatever they want. Some days it was a low calorie per pound buffet. Some days it was a medium calorie per pound buffet. Some days it was a high calorie per pound buffet. And as you can see, each day, no matter what the women were served, they ate about the same weight of food, about 3 pounds per day. Next. But at the end of the 2 days, the women who were eating the low calorie per pound buffet ate 425 calories less per day. So eating the same weight of food, they had cut a significant amount of calories out of their diet. And if you can imagine extending this over days, weeks, months, or years, that's how weight loss or the prevention of weight gain can occur. So when someone comes and sees me for weight loss, I don't restrict their portions. I don't put them on smaller size of foods. I start to swap out their buffet and and encourage them to eat more fruits and vegetables, starches and non-starchy. I move their slider to the left on that spectrum so that they can feel full and satisfied and have energy without feeling hungry or restricted like the women in the study. Next. Excuse me. I can't talk. Come back in a minute. Sorry. All right, so the broad study was a randomized trial that put this into effect in New Zealand. So you can see they had 33 people who were put on the whole foods plant-based diet and 32 people on a controlled diet. They were in their 50s and they had BMIs in the around 34, which is considered obese. Next. Tell me if you ever heard of a diet like this. The diet for the intervention group was whole grains, legumes, vegetables, and fruits. Participants were asked to eat in there until they were full. There were no restrictions on calorie counts. Don't restrict size or portions. They gave them a traffic light pattern to show what foods to consume, limit, or avoid. Potatoes were encouraged, breads, cereals, and pastas to satisfy the appetite. Avoid refined oils and animal products. They discourage high-fat plant foods such as nuts and avocados and highly processed foods, and limit salt, sugar, and caffeine, and a vitamin B12. Next. And you can see at the end of 3 months, both groups lost weight, but the interventional group lost 7 kilos more than the control group. And the study stopped, but the researchers kept in touch with the people. And at the end of 6 months, the people continued doing this eating pattern and lost 10 kilos, which is 22 pounds more. Next. The program led to significant improvements in body mass index, cholesterol, and other risk factors. To the best of our knowledge, this research has achieved greater weight loss at 6 and 12 months than any other trial that does not limit energy intake or mandate regular exercise. So that's very nice. This is a randomized controlled study. That's fine. This is a randomized controlled study, which is considered the best kind of story in the medical literature. Next. So maybe you just grabbed a piece of pasta, a box of pasta near you and say, wait, Dr. Ettinger, I'm looking at my box of pasta. It says there's 288 calories per 100 grams. That's 1,300 calories per pound. That's not a weight loss food. But that is how the package is, that's how the food is packaged, not how it's actually eaten. So next. What do you do with pasta? You cook it in water. So you move the slider by adding water to the pasta. You move the slider down to the left. So that pasta goes from 288 calories per 100 grams down to 131 calories per 100 pounds. White rice to the left goes from 365 down to 130. And oats goes from 389 down to 62. So what does the pasta, oats, and rice do? They soak up the water that they're being cooked in. The calories don't disappear. You can think of the pasta as doubling in size, the white rice as tripling in size, and the oats as absorbing 6 times its weight in water. So you feel fuller sooner. So you don't eat as much calories, and you feel satisfied, but have really cut down on the calories. And you can see all these are right around the 125 or less calories per 100 grams in the weight maintenance or weight loss range. This really is an argument against throwing oil into your cooking water too when you're cooking something, because the rice, I found a lot of my patients cook with oil in their rice when they're cooking. So the rice has bulked up with the same weight of water, but when you throw oil in, it bulks up to the same weight, but now there's oil, which, as you saw, is the highest calories per pound. So all of a sudden your rice, instead of having 130 calories per 100 grams, might have 200, 300, 400, 500 calories, but you don't feel any fuller. It's the same weight, but it's just absorbed all that water and oil. So this is the argument against throwing oil in your cooking water. Next. So these are the foods that you're eating. You're eating until you feel full and satisfied. They're delicious, colorful foods. Next. So one of my teenage patients said this was boring. Even though he had gained 50 pounds in the past year and had finally plateaued his weight, he couldn't maintain it for more than a few months because he said it was boring. So why did he say it was boring? Next. Because there's no added sugar. So you can see that around 10 years ago, it was figured out that people are eating out 54 pounds of added sugar per year. And that's a lot of sugar, and it really makes your brain very excited to be eating such sugar. And where's that sugar coming from? There's a recent survey of 85,000 products in the supermarket, and 74% had added sugar. So 3 out of 4 items that you're pulling off the shelf, surprisingly, have added sugar. So how do you avoid all that added sugar that's really hidden in a lot of foods? Next. Well, in my supermarket, you shop in this aisle with the fresh vegetables, the fruits, and the meats. So none of the foods have added sugar. So you can really, yes, you can lose weight by just eating in this aisle. Next. Which I call the low carb zone, but actually probably should be called the normal carb. These are the normal carbohydrates. Everything else in the supermarket, or 74% of the items in the supermarket that are all in packages, are really a high carb diet, high in added sugar. So I'm going to try to convince you to just eat the fruits, the vegetables, and to avoid the meat. Next. And yes, we're still going to try next. So let me spend a slide or two talking about the dangers of meat. So again, looking at that 100 grams, that Google has a nice feature that you can plug in any food and get the nutrition content, even if it doesn't have a label. Now, 100 grams is about the weight of a deck of cards. And you can see that this ground beef has quite a lot of calories, 250. You remember, if you're aiming to lose weight, you're aiming for less than 125. So that's a lot of calories and a lot of fat, 15 grams, a lot of saturated fat, killer trans fat, and cholesterol, 90 milligrams. Next. So you say, oh, I don't eat red meat, I eat chicken breasts. That's healthier, right? Well, you can see you're going down on the calories, you're down to 165, still kind of a weight gain food. You're less fat, the trans fat's gone, but look, you're getting the same amount of cholesterol. So this is the guy who goes to his doctor, Doc, I stopped eating red meat, I'm just eating chicken, why didn't my cholesterol budge? And the doc might say something like, oh, well, it's probably just genetics, and here's your Lipitor. But really, chicken is a lot of cholesterol that people don't realize. Next. And have you seen what's been done to the chickens over the years? This is a 56-day-old broiler chicken that you find in the supermarket. And really, I don't know what they've done to the chicken, but over the past few decades, kind of mirroring the obesity epidemic in this country, there have been big changes in chicken. So I don't consider chicken to be health food or a healthier choice. And this isn't conspiracy theory. The chicken industry is actually proud of this. They call the chicken of tomorrow as they were developing it. Next. And watch out if you're eating cheese. Cheese should come up next. There it is. So watch out if you're eating cheese. Look at that, 100 grams, you get 371 calories. That's a lot of calories. And you're way up on the fat, the saturated fat, the trans fat, and cholesterol. And look at the sodium in that cheese. So cheese, if you call the beef red meat and you call the chicken white meat, we call cheese yellow meat. And you might say, well, I don't eat a deck of cards of cheese every day. But have you heard of this cheese delivery device called pizza? Really, cheese is no longer a food, it's an ingredient. And if you look on any menu, you can see that cheese is snuck into just about every food. So yeah, people probably are eating a deck of cards or more of cheese every day. Next. So what about fish? As you can see, fish, you're still down on you're still up on the calories more than chicken, but less than the meat. And you're back up on the total fat with saturated fat, and you're still getting some cholesterol. Next. Have you heard the expression that that person is such a good salesman they could sell a refrigerator to an Eskimo? I kind of feel like that's what the fish industry is doing, because what do they call the fats that they sell in the salmon and the other fish? They call them healthy fats. But really, honestly, if someone's carrying around 20, 30, or 100 pounds, extra pounds of fat, then they've stored enough healthy and unhealthy fats that you don't need to go out of your way to eat more healthy fats. So next. Looking at beans. So look at 100 grams, you're nice back down at that 130 number, a nice weight maintenance or weight loss food if you're going to replace any of these foods with beans. You're getting no fat, no saturated fat, no trans fat, no cholesterol, and no sodium. So I consider the beans to be the real healthy choice. Next. So what I asked the audience, live audience at that point is to tell me can you go back? What's low in the beans? And everyone notices that the beans are much less protein, 8 grams versus double digits proteins for all the others, which is when people start to get worried about the protein found in the plant products versus the animal products. So next. Next. So you don't eat leaves, where do you get your protein? So I'm pretty sure that this 600-pound gorilla in the middle never had a protein shake. And if you really think about it, where did the cow get the protein to make its juicy steak? It ate grass. And the largest land animals on Earth are all plant-based, elephants, rhinoceroses, brontosaurus. So I really try to reassure people that they don't need to worry so much about protein, and I base that on a few things. But first, a commercial break. What if I were to tell you that there's a product out there, a drink, that if you drink it every day, and a person who cannot get out of bed will be able to get up and walk? Would you like to know what that drink is and what its protein content is? Next. Next. Breast milk, right? So a person who cannot get out of bed, if they drink this product every day for a year, they'll be able to get and walk. That would be breast milk. Next. So as you can see, for 100 grams of breast milk, there's only 1 gram of protein. It's only 1% protein by weight and 5 to 7% of calories from protein. So we really don't need that much protein. we grow our greatest amount in that first year of life, more than doubling our weight in less than a year, and make incredible muscular gains to be able to get up and walk. So why do these weightlifters who are bulking up insist on eating 30 or 40% of their calories from protein? When is a weightlifter ever going to double their weight like a baby and on such little amounts of protein? Next. So where do the recommended daily allowance of protein? So those recommendations come from 207 metabolic ward studies. So this is where patients are put in a hospital and given particular diets and go through various measurements and are figured out what the protein requirements are needed for typical people. So the absolute minimum is just 0.3 grams per kilo per day. Half the people will meet their needs with 0.6 grams per kilo per day, which is about 4 to 5% of their calorie intake. And 95% will meet their needs with 0.8 grams per kilo per day, or just 8 to 10% of their calories from protein. So next. So that gives us these, based on your age, these very reasonable amounts of protein intake per day, which actually are not so high. Next. What are people actually eating based on this national survey from 2013 and 2014? Yeah, considering this is for 95% of their people to meet their needs, and a lot of people need much less. Most people are eating 2 to 3 times the amount of protein that they actually need without even trying. Next. This is a study of the Seventh-day Adventists who adopt various degrees of a vegetarian diet and comparing their protein intakes, whether they're completely vegetarian, completely vegan, or whether they eat some fish or some milk and eggs, or whether they're non-vegan or vegetarian. And you can see everyone's getting the same amount of protein, again, without it really trying. So next. So what about, like I said, I see a lot of teenagers, I see athletes, and what about they say, okay, that's the protein needs for 95% of the population, but I'm special, I'm working out a lot, I'm a football player, and of course I need more protein. So I ask you, how much muscle can a person put on per month with a great nutrition and exercise program? And I get various amount of answers, but it's been studied, and people can put on about 1 pound of muscle per month. So what else in 9 months? You could put on 9 pounds of muscles. What else can some people do in 9 months? And that's have a baby. So how much would a woman who's making a baby every minute of every day, how much protein would she need? And the answer is 71 grams of protein per day. So actually, I missed those, or the format changed a little bit. Those numbers should be down in the 19 to 50-year-olds. So as you can see, everyone is eating more protein than they need. And really, the people that need the most protein are the pregnant and lactating women. So I had a young man tell me, hey, my coach is insisting I eat 200 grams of protein per day. And I said, tell your coach you're not pregnant. Why would a guy going to a gym a few hours a week ever need more protein than a woman who's making a baby every minute of every day for 9 months? Next. All right, so can anyone name this movie? This is Clockwork Orange, right? So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, Dr. Ettinger, you've been brainwashed by the vegan tree huggers. Well, let me show you some more information here with the next. This is a nutrient composition of plant and animal-based foods. So equal parts plant foods or animal foods, 500 calories, composed of tomatoes, spinach, lima beans, peas, and potatoes, or 500 calories of beef, pork, chicken, and whole milk. So you can look down the column and see what you're actually getting if you're eating 500 calories of either these plant foods or animal foods. So you're getting no cholesterol in the plant foods. Cholesterol only is found in the cell membranes of animals. So you don't get them in the cell membranes of plants or cell walls of plants. You're getting a lot more fat in the animal-based foods, and you're getting the same amount of protein in these foods, the plant foods versus the animal. So you're not going to get a protein deficiency eating the plant foods. And these aren't even superfoods. Look, this is like lima beans and peas. It's not quinoa and kale and things like that. So really, even these basic plant foods are giving you plenty of protein. And what else are you getting? A lot of beta carotene in the plant foods and fiber. So dietary fiber is actually short for plant fiber. So you only get fiber from plants. You're not getting any from animal foods. So when someone asks me, well, Dr. Ettinger, where do you get your protein? I say I get it from my foods, and I might ask them, where do you get your fiber? Because if you're not eating the plants, whole plants, you're not getting any fiber, which is important for you. You're getting a lot more vitamin C, folate, vitamin E, iron. Iron is a metal in the ground, and it comes up in the plants, and the cow eats the plants to the grass. You get the iron to put in the steak. You're going to get plenty of iron if you go directly to the source also. Magnesium, and then calcium. Look how much calcium you get in the plants, because the calcium is a rock in the ground, and so much more than even in a glass of whole milk. So next. So I ask you, who is actually being brainwashed? All day long, we see these advertisements for manly recipes to please dad this Father's Day, bring on the meat. And milk, the most successful marketing campaign, convinced 300 million people in this country that without your product, they're going to develop brittle bones. So I ask you, who's actually being brainwashed? It's like the alcoholic who's given up alcohol and notices all the advertisements. When you give up these animal products, you start to notice how many animal product advertisements we are seeing all day long. And these are inferior products. They have too much of the bad stuff like fat and cholesterol, and not enough of the good stuff like the vitamins and minerals. Next. So we still are fixated on this protein. So we have products for insecure men, like the whey protein. Next. For the ladies, we have products that are wrapped in pink. And I don't know if you can see the shampoo that has bodybuilding protein. I'm not sure if the lady's supposed to put it in her hair or drink it. Next. Get your protein with your coffee. Next. Get your protein with your cereal. Next. And of course, get your protein with your meat. But nobody needs to go out of their way for protein. Everyone's getting enough protein. There's no medical reason why we need all this protein. It's all marketing and focus groups. And honestly, if you're eating these products to get your protein, that's like smoking to get your oxygen, right? There's oxygen everywhere. When you're smoking to get your oxygen, yeah, you're getting your oxygen, but you're also getting all the bad stuff in the cigarette. If you're eating these products to get your protein, yeah, you'll get your protein, but these products in the middle are filled with added sugar, and the meat product is filled with the cholesterol and the saturated fat and trans fat. So you really don't need to smoke to get your oxygen, and you don't need to eat these products to get your protein. Next. All right, so in my opinion about the current obesity epidemic is stop blaming the person. It's not gluttony and sloth. It's not that people are being poor at protein restriction and exercise. Next. I blame the system that's constantly stimulating your lust for protein and for processed foods, which are full of the animal products and the products that are full of salt, added sugar, and fat. Next. So you only have to change one thing. Next. And that's everything. You need the willpower to be different. You don't need the willpower to portion restrict or exercise. You need the willpower to be insane, basically. So this is actually the definition of insanity. So we live in a democracy where the majority votes for our president, and the Congress makes the laws, and the majority makes the culture. And right now, the majority believes that you need to avoid carbohydrates and you get enough protein, and animal products will make you strong, and milk will make your bone. That's what the majority believes. But if you were to believe otherwise, then by definition, you're in the minority and you're insane. So you have to have the willpower to be different, to eat different than everyone else. But quite frankly, in this country, so many people are suffering from obesity and hypertension and diabetes that I would choose to eat different than everyone else so that I don't get those outcomes. And I try to encourage my patients to eat differently than everyone else also, to be different, and so that they don't get those outcomes either. Next. So who is the plant-based diet for? Well, the appropriately planned vegetarian and vegan diets, according to the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, is perfectly good for everyone, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, adolescence, older adulthood, and athletes. Next. So how do you plan appropriately? So here are sources of your micro and macronutrients, and as you can see, there's lots of plant-based choices for all of your needs, and really eating a very diverse buffet of all these plants will give you everything that you need. Next. There are some considerations. For example, zinc, some compounds in plants called phytates can make zinc less bioavailable. So the solution is to eat more products containing zinc. Certainly soaking and cooking reduces the phytates. And then garlic and onion can increase the bioavailability of zinc. And for iron, you can boost the absorption of iron with vitamin C. Iron absorption can also be diminished by certain compounds found in plants. So the solution for that is to always eat fruit with your meals to get some vitamin C, or squeeze a lemon in your water or on your foods to help with that iron absorption. Next. Other considerations is iodine, that amounts can fluctuate in sea vegetables. Goitrogens are compounds in plants that can interfere with absorption. So the solution for that is to use iodized salt, especially if high blood pressure is not a problem. And then in my household, we eat a lot of veggie sushi. Now, vitamin B12 is an important consideration because it's not found in commercially made plants. The problem is that vitamin B12 is only made by soil bacteria. So our plants that you find in the supermarket have been triple washed. They are grown hydroponically and never touch the soil, so they don't get to absorb any B12 or enough B12. So you can't really rely on plants to get your vitamin B12. However, animals, if you're eating animal products, you'll get your B12 because the animals are living in dirt and are getting exposed to the soil bacteria, and they're eating dirty plants. So they get their B12. So if you're going to only eat plants, then you really must take a supplement and or eat fortified foods. Certainly the vegan industry is recognizing this need and starting to supplement vegan products. Especially I like nutritional yeast. You can sprinkle it on your foods. It gives it a little bit of nutty or cheesy flavor. Next. But really, to think about these deficiencies and to worry about these deficiencies is kind of like that firefighter who's using the water, the hose to put out a fire and saying, maybe I'm going to save this water, not put out the fire because I might want to water these bushes in the future. That's how I kind of think about worrying about these deficiencies. If you're obese, if you're hypertensive, if you're diabetic, then your house is on fire, basically. And the plant-based diet is a great tool. And don't worry about these deficiencies. You can certainly take care of that in the future and easily taken care of. Please use this as a great tool for putting out the fire. Don't worry about the bushes that you might need to water later. Next. So who is the plant-based diet not for? And appreciation to Dr. Joshi, if he's on this call, because he helped me with this slide. So you certainly want to avoid if you have a condition called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, a condition called SIBO, where people who eat certain fermentable foods, mostly carbohydrates and plants, certain plants, they get very bad indigestion and bowel problems. So if you're going to have that problem, you don't want to be on a plant-based diet. And then there's this fascinating condition called cytosterolemia, where a genetic mutation causes plant sterols to accumulate in arterial plaque, skin, and red blood cells, kind of like the cholesterol from animals. So there's only about 80 to 100 people in the world with this condition, but certainly they cannot eat plants because it can worsen their heart disease and angina. You want to use caution with celiac disease, avoiding plants with gluten. Certainly someone with an eating disorder, if they have an unhealthy relationship with food, if they're very restricted with their eating patterns, then I would pause before recommending this diet for them. People with allergies to nuts, soy, or there are even people with the vitamin B12 allergy that it can cause a severe rash. So people with allergies you want to use caution with. And then a history of oxalate kidney stones. Oxalate can be found in a lot of leafy greens and nuts. So you don't want to encourage more kidney stones and need to plan appropriately. Increasing your vitamin K suddenly by going plant-based can interfere with Coumadin dosing. And then also take note that soy can interfere with your synthetic thyroid medicine. So these are just considerations, not ruling out the diet for someone, but certainly need to be cautious. Now, a challenge that we have sometimes is if someone's living in what's called a food desert or if they have food insecurity. One of my patients, his family shops at the local corner store where a banana costs $3. So it's hard to encourage that family on a limited budget to eat more fruits and vegetables when they're so expensive. But really, this is a diet of the poor people of the world. It's a starch-based diet. If you can get rice and beans and corn, then you can really thrive on this diet. Potatoes, eating as the poor people in the world eat, so as to avoid the diseases of the rich, which is the obesity and the diabetes and the hypertension. So what about type 2 diabetes mellitus? What about all those carbs? Next. So we can go back to Slido. I really want to get a vote here. as to what do you think causes insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes? Is it by eating too much carbs, protein, fat, or none of the above? It's genetic. So if Leanna, if I could switch over back to Slido, we can get a vote.
Okay.
Are you seeing?
Yep.
Are you seeing the Slido screen?
Yes.
3 votes so far.
Where are we voting again?
Oh, on the Slido on another screen. If you go to www.slido.com.
And then put in the code H613 and you'll get to these particular questions.
Hi, this is Judy. I'm on the slide, but it doesn't seem to want to accept my vote.
Go ahead and vote in the chat then.
There's a submit button. You choose and submit.
Okay, maybe I'm just at the results. I'll keep looking.
Oh, people are thinking 75% say fat causes. That's a good answer. An educated group. Okay, can we go back to the slide? No.
Sure. Okay, and now I will present my window. And here we go.
Okay. So like I said, I am an insane doctor for following this guideline, but I'm not insane enough to risk my medical license. So as you can see that the standards of medical care and diabetes from this year recommends a Mediterranean, a low carbohydrate, and vegetarian or plant-based diet are examples of healthful eating patterns. And then these 2 adult endocrinology groups also say that for type 2 diabetes, all patients should strive to attain and maintain an optimal weight through a primarily plant-based meal plan. So I'm going along with the standard of care here. But really the benefit of plant-based is the low carbohydrate. As you see, not eating that 54 pounds of added sugar per year is certainly going to help your blood sugars, but also low fat. Next. So yeah, consider the role of dietary fat. I skipped a bunch of slides here about the physiology of it, but there's this one study that's really enlightening. Next. From the New England Journal of Medicine. So, we talk about different kinds of studies, observational studies being weak, but randomized controlled clinical trials being strong. So this was a randomized controlled clinical trial where they tried to prevent type 2 diabetes mellitus by changes in lifestyle among subjects with pre-diabetes. So they are already having higher blood sugar. So during the trial, which is a year long, the risk of diabetes was reduced by 58% in the interventional group. And the reduction in the incidence of diabetes was directly associated with changes in lifestyle. So what did the interventional group do? Next. So you can see the interventional group was better at losing weight. How did they lose weight? They were better at reducing the fat intake in their diet. They were better at reducing the saturated fat intake in their diet, and they were better at increasing the fiber intake. So if they were better at reducing the fat and saturated fat intake in their diet, that means they were eating less animals. And if they were better at increasing the fiber, remember I said fiber is short for plant fiber, they were eating more plants. They were eating less fat and more carbohydrates. So how did they get such improved benefits in reducing their risk of becoming truly diabetic, more carbohydrates, more plants, less fat, less animals. Next. So again, pulling up these meals, we talked about how to make these meals more weight loss. How do you make these meals less likely to cause diabetes? Well, taking out the saturated fat means taking the meat and the cheese out of the sandwich and off of the pasta. And how do you increase the fiber? Well, put more bread on there, put more fibrous plant materials on there. Next. So yes, I want to finish up by using the health belief model to help people who want to make some dietary changes to improve their diet. So this is what I go over with the families that I'm working with. So first thing I ask them about is, what is their perceived threat? So that's a subjective assessment of the severity and consequences of a health problem, which may be an internal stimuli like pain, or a new diagnosis like hypertension or diabetes, or an external cue to action. So one of my young patients was like upset that his dad was recently diagnosed with diabetes, and another young patient was upset that his uncle recently was found to have severe heart disease. So there can be an external cue to action also. Next. So what is the benefit of making these changes? And that's the individual's assessment of the value or advantage of engaging in health promoting behavior, which may or may not be connected to the perceived threat. So a young patient I'm working with may like, yeah, I'm worried about diabetes, but I know that if I lose a few pounds, I'll really look great in my prom dress. So they might have that benefit in mind. Next. I try to talk to the families about perceived benefits that are above and beyond their own health. For example, eating plant-based creates scarcity in a time of abundance while still eating ad lib. So like the patients in the broad study, you can still eat where you're full, but you create scarcity. So like I showed my grocery store, I only shop in that aisle. There's whole aisles that I don't go into because I know I'm not going to be able to find food there that I'm in line with my eating plan. There's whole restaurants that I'm not going to go to. If I'm walking down the street, there's maybe only one restaurant that I would find food for me, not every restaurant. So you can really, without thinking about it, create scarcity in this time of abundance. I put the Daniel fast on there, which is mentioned in the Bible, in the book of Daniel, as because a lot of arguments go back and forth about the different dietary plans, and people accusing scientists and researchers and publishers of having conflicts of interest or biases or things like that. But I think the author of the Bible doesn't have such a conflict of interest or a bias. But the Daniel fast is mentioned as a vegan diet that Daniel thrived on for 3 years while he was working as an advisor to a king and did not want to eat the meat and cheeses and the rich foods that the king was eating. So then also for some people, being an ethical vegan and really thinking about where their food comes from and the animal welfare is another perceived benefit that can make someone feel like this is the right choice for them. So next. So apparently being vegan raises this is the question that everyone gets after where do you get your protein is, hey, what if you're just trapped on a deserted island and it's just you and a cow? Would you eat that cow? So yeah, you got me. I would eat my cow. I don't eat the cow now because I think that's going to improve my survival over years and decades, not to get the diseases associated with eating animals. But yeah, if I was worried about my survival over days to weeks, then yeah, I would eat the cow. But then I throw that question back to the person and I say, okay, what if you were trapped on the deserted island with the cow, but also with a bountiful amount of plants like fruits and vegetables and starches, things like that? Then you see that it actually becomes a choice whether you need to eat the cow or not, whether you want to eat the cow or not, if you can survive on all the plants that are around you on that deserted island. Next. Well, actually, we are on an island and it's called the planet Earth. And there's plenty of plants on the planet Earth to feed the population. The problem is right now, we're feeding a lot of those plants to the animals to fatten up the animals. And unfortunately, that's causing a host of problems, health problems and environmental problems. Next. So speaking of a house on fire, our planet is on fire. It's warmed up by 1 degree Celsius in the past 150 years since the Industrial Revolution. And this slide really breaks down nicely how different food products servings, portions of different foods really impacts the environment. So you can see the red bars are all the animals. The bars that are kind of gray and blue in the middle are your fish, dairy, and eggs. And then the green dots and bars on the bottom of the slide are all the plant products. And you can see along the bottom the greenhouse gases of the different kinds of foods, the land use, energy use, acidification potential, and eutrophication. Eutrophication is that picture to the right of when you get algae overgrowth. Too much manure or too much fertilizer ends up in a waterway, and you get overgrowth of the algae, which really destroys the local environment. So really, you can see the animal products just have many orders of magnitude greater environmental impact than the plant products, which kind of makes sense because you have to grow the plants, so you have all the resources that are put into growing the plants, and then feed the plants to the animals. The animal is using land and making waste and requires so much space. So it's not a surprise to see that trend. But also what people do find surprising is that fish makes a lot of greenhouse gases, the consumption of fish, the transport of fish. And then also the dairy and eggs cause a lot of environmental impact, as you can see with their high energy use and acidification and eutrophication potential, probably because you have to keep the animals alive to be making the milk and the eggs. You have to keep the female animals alive. So really, the kind of food choices that we're making might have more of an impact on the environment than what kind of car we drive or how much we recycle, as you can see. Next. So I try to talk to the families that I work with about these benefits. And then we talk about the barriers to making the change. So these are the obstacles. I try to reflect back to the families as they're bringing up these myths that they're holding on to, like, oh, eating healthy is expensive, or, oh, where am I going to get my protein? All the excuses that they're making are reflecting back on them. Well, you are worried about diabetes. Well, you do want to fit into your prom dress, or you do care about the animals. So trying to get them to take the step forward to recognize why it's important to make their change as they're throwing out their perceived barriers. But what it really boils down to is all these perceived barriers are due to something called the pleasure trap, which is the next slide, which is this nice theory by Dr. Doug Lisle, which says that high-calorie processed foods with all the salt, fat, and added sugar really comfort us into thinking that our survival problems have been solved. Our caveman ancestors needed calories to survive, and we're getting these calories in abundance that's tricking our brain into thinking that we're doing what we need to survive. But the salt and fat and added sugar and all these calories are really now the problem. And our brain has been spun into a puzzle it was never designed to solve. So in the moment, picking the right food, which is the whole food, feels wrong. I'm not going to get enough calories or salt or fat or sugar from that apple. And picking the wrong, which is the processed food, feels right. I am going to get enough calories or salt or sugar or fat from that bacon or that soda in the moment. But that's really hard for our caveman brain to differentiate what's good for us in the moment versus what's good for us, for the long term. So imagine that if you drank soda, you all of a sudden gained 40 pounds. Your belt buckle popped. One soda causes obesity. But no, it's after you drunk the 5,000th soda that your doctor might say to you, hey, we should talk about your weight. It's really hard for our caveman brain to differentiate what's right in the moment and what's good for us in the long term. So how do we make that change? How do we convince one part of our brain to make the wrong choice, the choice that feels wrong, which is the whole food in that moment? And that's where Dr. Judson Brewer offers his mindfulness lessons. So he says that to make these changes and to get yourself out of this pleasure trap is to be curious about why you've had that craving, and to be curious as to why you're making that decision. So if you smell the bacon and the pleasure trap says, I'm going to get some fat and salt, that's going to help with my survival, to be thinking, well, do I really need that? Am I worried about my survival now? Well, no. Do I really need that? Where did that come from? Oh, it came from a pig carcass. Well, that kind of turns me off. And by asking these questions of your cravings or of the foods presenting it in front of you, maybe the environmental impact, or maybe fitting into your prom dress, whatever is important to you, that leads to disenchantment. And once you've achieved that disenchantment and realize, you can make the better decision. So on the Slido, on the Slido app, I put links on those bars on the left to these two doctors' TED Talks. So you can learn more about these concepts, which I think are really helpful to families. Next. All right, so then once we've gotten to the next step, we talk about self-efficacy. So a person might really appreciate and understand the threats and the benefits and how to overcome the barriers, but they might just worry about their own competence to perform that new behavior. For example, do they have the cooking skills, or are they even motivated? Next. So I try to set up a SMART goal for them, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So you really want to, some people say, oh, soon I'll start eating healthier and I'll lose 100 pounds. It's like, that's not really going to get you anywhere. So you can say something like, 2 times a week for the next month, I'm going to bring a brown bag of lunch to school, and in that is going to be baked potato or something like that. I try to get very specific and something that's really achievable for them and has a real time, measurable time goal. But I ask them, I say, don't rely on motivation, because motivation is fleeting. I mean, it's March now, and how many people are still working on their New Year's resolution? The real goal to success is to use discipline for success. And the difference is that motivation requires you feeling good about something before you do it, whereas discipline rewards you with that good feeling after you do it. So next, think about brushing your teeth. So I'm sure you've all brushed your teeth every day for the past however many years. Is anyone ever motivated to brush their teeth? I don't think so. But because you're disciplined to brush your teeth every day, at the end of 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you have a nice smile, low dental bills, and you've been rewarded at the end of the activity, and you have that good feeling after you do it. So as you're thinking about making changes, really don't rely on motivation. You got to make the goal to success as discipline so that you can be rewarded, recognize that you can be rewarded after making those changes. Next. So I've told a lot of stories over the last hour, and some are debatable. I understand that, except for these two. Next. The more you eat to the left of this slider, you're going to get weight loss. The more you eat to the right, you're going to have weight gain. And next. And that the environmental impact of growing plants, then feeding plants to animals, then humans eating the animals is always going to be greater than growing plants and then humans eating plants. Next. And this is a real gift. It's a gift that these are in alignment. So it's an opportunity to be better. I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone else, but since I made this change 6 years ago, I'm healthier. I lost weight myself, and I'm pleased that my food choices make less of an impact on the environment. I'm pleased that my food choices make less of an impact on the animals on this planet, and that makes me feel good. And this is a gift that these two are in alignment. Next. So if you want to create a plant-based nutrition plan, I've put links on the Slido to these resources, but really there are thousands of cookbooks, recipes, websites with the information for you to develop a program. And now thank you for your attention, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
We'll start with Enrique's. Does excess protein cause kidney stones and gallbladder stones? And I'm assuming excess plant protein is part of the question as well.
Yeah, so I see patients with kidney stones, and I do 24-hour urines on them to see their protein forming potential. And often, or not often, I will see someone who seems to have a lot of protein in their diet, and I don't see the protein in their urine because that would be abnormal. But what I see is a lot of phosphate, a lot of what's called protein breakdown products, and a lot of uric acid, and a lot of sulfate. And yeah, that person's going low carb and eating a lot of meat and animal products, and that has been shown to be associated with kidney stones. But I don't see plant-based diet as particularly causing kidney stones.
Excellent. Let's take just one more question from the chat. I think we need to wrap up now. So Judy had a question. How is it that cold pressed oils are considered factory processed, but pasta is not?
Right. So it's pasta is considered minimally processed. So some fiber and water are taken out of the plant that makes the pasta. And so you're not getting anything added to it like sugars or oils or fats. Whereas, yeah, the oils, it just moves this, it is minimally processed, if you will, but just so much higher in calorie concentration. And you're just losing so many of the vitamins and minerals that come from the plants when you make the oils that you're just left with a very high calorie oil product that if you're trying to lose weight is not ideal for you.
Great, excellent. Let's thank you so much. We're going to call it a day so folks can get back to work, including you.
Sorry I ran late.
That's okay. This is really excellent. Such a great food for thought. My favorite pun of our world. But I just want to remind everybody, we do have an ongoing web series. Tomorrow night, our friend Enrica in Queens will be hosting another event, a little bit more informal, but also with a spin to look into cancer and cancer prevention with food as medicine. So we invite you to sign up and check out all the events that are currently posted on our website, and others will be added as well. And please feel free to invite other people to join us. These are really open to everybody, even though when we do things live in person, we are focused on the New York metro area, but anybody can tune in across the globe for these. Also, please join us on social media. We're on Facebook and on Instagram. And feel free to reach out to me or to members of our team if you have ideas for where we can take these messages when life sort of picks up again and we're back in the world. There's many places where these messages will be critically important. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Take care.